How will the James Harden era be remembered? We'll talk about that more in next on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Hello, my name is Keith Pompey. I'm a co-host of Locked On 76ers, along with my new co-host, John Mitchell. And we're going to give you all an update or give you our opinion on how we feel how the James Harden thing will be remembered, his tenure in Philadelphia. And with John being a longtime NBA reporter, there's no one better out there that I would love to hold this conversation with. So, John, in your opinion, bro, how will the James Harden era be remembered?
I think it will be remembered as an era where we bought it high and we sold it low. We can't, after James Harden was welcomed to the city after the Ben Simmons debacle. And I remember watching, Stephen A. and Kendrick Perkins and all those guys on ESPN and the other outlets. And I remember them saying, early on, they were like, hey, two generational talents. And the Sixers got off to that hot start and people jumped on board with it. It's going to work. We're going to be something special. And lo and behold, ironically, I remember it watching that game when Brooklyn came to town and they dismantled the 76ers. And, after the game, KD was gloating. Kyrie was talking about how bad James was defensively, and you started hearing the stories about how he roasted him, and that kind of sent the message to me that that was a game, that was a return of Ben Simmons. It was the first time Ben Simmons showed up. I don't think he played in that game, but he was on the bench if I recall, and he showed up with one of his extravagant, outlandish outfits that he became known for, and they spanked the 76ers, and that's kind of like a metaphor, I think, for how they're going to be remembered. If you look at it, we all, with that talent, they were supposed to get out of the first round. But they just fell flat on their faces with James in the late stages of Game 6 against Miami when they lost at home, got eliminated at home, and he didn't show up at all. And games 6 and 7, where they had Boston this past season, where they had Boston right where they wanted. They had them right in right in the crosshairs and squeezed the trigger, and they missed by miles. So I think that the James Harden era in Philadelphia will be remembered as it started with great expectations. And a lot of it was the unknown, because a lot of folks who really follow the NBA recognize, who really follow it, and you specifically, who talk to people, James has been, he's for those first 82, he's a man, early on to the playoffs, but in late rounds of playoffs, he becomes kind of sketchy. And, I think it will be a bridge to getting beyond the Ben Simmons era. But it's not, it's a flash in the pan with no success, no real success to speak of.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, everything, like I remember how the city was ecstatic when they traded for him.
Mm-hmm.
And, James was supposed to be the guy that, was supposed to get him to bring a championship. I mean,
Right.
James is a guy that the Sixers wanted for a while. I mean, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
supposed to bring the championship. Now, the one thing I will say is, James did lead the NBA in assists this past season with 10.7 per game, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, by doing that, he became the first Sixer to win the league assist title since Wilt Chamberlain in 1967-68. So,
Wow.
when you say that, that says a lot.
It does.
But the thing is, let's get this. Harden is blamed for partly having a hand in Doc Rivers' fire.
Mm-hmm.
Harden didn't see eye to eye with the former Sixers coach.
Right.
And he also, the crazy part is he didn't extend the olive branch to him following when they lost 112 to 88 in game 7. Yeah, he kind
Right.
of threw Doc under the bus a little bit, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
so now you look at it, right? We'll say you're throwing Doc under the bus or saying like, oh, he's okay, da, da, da. But James was a 3-time scoring champion who looked uninterested from the start of that game 7.
Right.
Scored just 9 points, James, on 3 of 11 shooting to go with 5 turnovers.
Right.
And this marked the second time in as many seasons that Harden had a lackluster effort in the final game of the season. So when I think of that, now when we want to talk about the other game, we're talking about on May the 12th, 2022, when Harden had 11 points, 9 assists, and 4 turnovers in a 99-90 loss. He was held scoreless in the second half, right? So when we talk about it, you're right. You
Yep.
look at all the great things he did, but he didn't produce in big games, right? And then the way that people also going to remember him is, critics will use his off-day ventures out of towns
Right.
as examples of not him being dedicated to the game,
Right.
right?
Right.
They say in part that's part of the reason why he will never win a championship.
Yeah.
So to me, the things that we both touched on is how James Harden is going to be remembered in
Right.
Philly. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, I hate to say it, a tease.
It was.
And
It was.
a tease. Like,
Yeah.
like you said, 82 games, the brother is good.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like when the going gets I ain't gonna say gets rough. When you need him to step up.
He tucks tail.
Yeah.
That's his MO.
Yeah. I mean,
He tucks his tail and disappears, or tucks
Yeah.
his tail and runs.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you, Keith, man. I mean, just think of it. This is Philadelphia, and I know maybe he doesn't understand the legacy and the history of the city, but if you don't show up, there's certain teams you have to show up against. In football, you have to show up against the Eagles. You have to show up against Dallas. Particularly in the playoff game. In basketball, that's still I still believe the Boston-Philadelphia rivalry in the history of the teams, sports of the teams in the city. I think that's the greatest rivalry in Philadelphia history, in Philadelphia sports history. And if you show up and your last game is remembered as a 30-point game loss where Jason Tatum just erupted on your team in Boston, and you just were basically you were MIA, bruh. And then to show up and say that you'll never play for a Dow Morey organization. How many people were like, hey, that's actually what I want to hear. We don't want you, James. Nothing personal, but it's just you just don't get it done, bro. Don't get it done. And when he goes out there and he starts load managing in LA, and Kawhi's load managing, and Paul George starts load managing, I know T. Lou's going to be pulling those gray hairs out of his head.
Yeah. And what's crazy, man, like about this whole thing. So yesterday, we did the podcast. I did some stories, and then I went to a funeral, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm at the funeral, and then
my condolences.
Oh, thanks. So I go to the funeral, and whenever people wanted to talk, like, I guess to not talk about
Right.
the passing,
Sure.
they were talking about James Harden.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about ladies in their 60s, 70s saying, I'm glad he's out of here. I'm glad he's gone. And like, what was he like? What is this and that? And I'm like, he was all right. But it was like, dang, like they really talking about that at the funeral.
At
Like,
the
at the
funeral.
funeral.
Yeah.
Now again, it was kind of like the change the subject, like
Sure.
people tearing up, and then keep coming. I guess you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'll be okay, baby. What's up with that James Harden dude? I'm happy they got rid of him. I'm like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? It was like, wow, okay. This is how we're getting our mind together. This is how we're doing all that other stuff. So
But
it was,
it's almost like he quit. I mean, whatever the personal reasons are, whatever the bickering is between him and Daryl Morey, and with all due respect, Daryl Morey has kind of sheltered him and taken care of him, for the better part of his career. But in Philadelphia, it looks like you quit on the squad.
I mean, yeah, I think this is a tough place to play. I mean, you got to be bought in. You have to do this. It's not just entertainment. Like,
Right.
I mean, you just got to be bought in. And we'll talk more about that when we get right back from this little short break. Right? Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. So, Mitch, I mean, a lot of people don't understand that. Like, the thing about Philly, Philadelphia might be the toughest place to play, one of the toughest places to play if people view that you don't give your all and if you're not locked in. I mean, Philly's the place, like, I'm going to be honest with you. So I remember, I ain't going to say I remember, but because it wasn't that long ago, but Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, and his son, Shador and Travis Hunter, on a Monday or whatever day it was a season opener, might have been a Wednesday or a Tuesday, whatever it was a season opener of the NBA season. It was Denver playing the Lakers. And it was one of those things where they took that hour plus or however long it is drive from Boulder, Colorado to go watch the Denver Nuggets host the Lakers. They got floor seats, they got the whole nine. Now, granted, they already went to practice, they did what they had to do, right? But they're sitting there at this game. They're like, they got the video going. They're on highlights on Sports Center, the whole nine. It's on Instagram, it's on TikTok, it's on everything. Well, then they go to UCLA later that week and get boat raced, right?
Yeah.
Now, if this was Philly,
all
the comments would have been like, "What's going on?"
Right.
No, like, hold up now.
Yeah.
I don't want to see my coach at the game.
Yeah.
I want to see them and then I don't want to see the coach until game day.
And
right?
I don't want you
to be studying film. Right? They should be doing this. Right. They should be doing that.
Right.
And that's just how it is in Philly.
Yeah.
Like, they feel like you're not 100% dedicated to the game.
Right.
They don't. You can be a player like you can be a role player, but if you're gritty, grimy, hustling all the time, they will love you more than the superstar who they felt like didn't give 100%.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's just how it is here.
Right. Yeah.
That's just how it is.
Yeah. Just let Patrick Beverly get a few floor burns, diving for a loose ball, and then get up in an opposing player's face one time. That's all it takes, and let ESPN pick it up, and people and Philly will fall in love with him. Philly will fall. In Philadelphia is knuckle up. That's what they ask you to do. And I'm glad you kind of cleared it up for me about Deion, because my brother told me that the game was in L.A., which would have meant that they would have had to have flown there. And can you imagine, like you said, how Philly would react to that if that original scenario that my brother told me about existed? But since it was in Denver, it was just a drive. It's just a drive. It's an evening out, father and son. But like you said, if that happens in Philadelphia and you get bum rushed in your next appearance on the floor of the court, they're going to kill you. It's a tough town, maybe overly tough. But we've grown up here, and I've sat in I've been covered 1,000 different NBA games, man, and there's just, I never will forget the time when it was 2001 when Beyonce. And what's the name of her group? Beyonce's group.
Man.
She's been Beyonce for so long. I'm aging myself, but they performed at halftime of a game when.
I remember that.
And Beyonce got booed. And this is a woman now who's charging $10,000, for people to come to her concert. And the Sixers were losing to the Lakers. It was that Kobe series.
Destiny's Child.
Yeah. And the free Destiny's Child concert at halftime, and they got booed.
Somebody had Lakers gear on, right?
Yeah, they had right.
He was just trying to keep in uniform. Like one had six. Yeah.
And I was enjoying myself. I'm neutral. I'm covering the game. I was in Washington, working in Washington at the time. And so that's what Philadelphia is, man. It's hardscrabble. It's like those older women you were talking about at the funeral. They were glad to see James, and it's not personal, but it's like, bruh, we can see right through you.
Exactly. They can see right through you.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all, we'll be right back after a little quick break. 2-second break. Now, Mitch, I got to talk to you about Jaden Springer, right? Mm-hmm. So Jaden Springer yesterday, this isn't surprising at all, but yesterday he had his 4th-year option on his rookie contract picked up. Now, typically, this isn't always, is it expected? It's something that's expected, but it's not always guaranteed that it will happen for players. Right. Because people forget Jaleel Okafor didn't get his picked up, nor did Furkan Korkmaz get his picked up, as Sixers. So it's something that you expect to happen, but if you like struggling mightily, they don't. They're not going to do it. But that means that a lot of times they don't think they could trade you too. But the thing about it is, Springer, here's a guy that's 21 years old. Mm-hmm. A young man who, basically when he came into the league, he was the second youngest person in the league at that time. Mm-hmm. The first 2 years of his career, he basically was a G League player. He rarely played. This year, he's coming in, he's showing an elite shot blocking ability. Mm-hmm. He has to cut down on his fouls. He brings a lot of energy. But I feel like he does have an upside as a rotation player moving forward. He just needs to stick those shots, and he needs to stop fouling as much as he has. But as far as defense, when he keeps his hands out of the way, gets his hands out of the way, he's blocking people's shot. He's doing great. What's your thoughts on him getting his option picked up?
Well, it tells me, and like you said, it means possibly that maybe they can't move him right now. But the only way you'll find out if he can be moved or if he is a player is for him to be in practice every day, for him to be an option on Nick Nurse's bench. And let's be quite honest, I love Doc Rivers, But I think that one thing Doc did was if you could get in Doc's doghouse and just disappear. You could be playing. You could get some minutes, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Doc would just wave the wand, and you'd be gone. You'd be out of the rotation. I think this gives the 76ers a chance to look at a guy who, knows he's. I think he recognizes at a young age that he is a fringe player. And they're giving him an opportunity, and they do need defense out of their backcourt. I mean, as good as Maxey has looked, there's some times when it's like, Tyrese can be a matador. He can be a matador as a defensive end. Mm-hmm. And if you have a young, hard scrabble guy who's willing to get in front of somebody and really move his feet for 5 to 7 minutes a game, that might be, you got to get in. You got to fit in where you get in. And that could be who he is. I'm curious because I did see him, the shot blocking. I mean, we all saw, was it the Jason Tatum block during the preseason? We saw that. So the athleticism is there. So, maybe there's some minutes for him to get and to show his wares, not just for the 76ers, but for the rest of the league. And I'm going to put my odds on the side that they like what they're seeing from him, as opposed to they can't move him, because teams haven't really seen a lot of him yet. But I think Nick Nurse, a guy who goes deeper into his bench than Doc, doesn't etch things in stone. I think we're going to see more of Springer this year. I do.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's more. I think they do like him now. And the thing is, I wonder how the addition of these new guys, even though these guys are older, you know what I mean? But the addition of them, how that impacts his minutes, because, he's played in 2 to 3 games. Mm-hmm. He's averaging 6 minutes. The last game, he got kind of sort of a quick hook because he had like 4 fouls in like 4 minutes, right? But when you have a guy like KJ Martin, who's a gritty guy, athletic, this and that, you wonder how that may take away some of his minutes, right? But again, he's a guy, young, athletic. He's not your prototypical guard. And the reason why I'm saying that is because he's, powerful. Like, he looks like, not at him, but he looks like a football player.
Yeah.
Like, he's built like that. Mm-hmm. But his defense is good. And it's weird. Like, the thing is, you don't know what you have in him yet because he hasn't played. And I don't even think it was the doghouse. I think he came to the wrong team. He was drafted. He was the 28th overall pick, mm-hmm. who was drafted to a team with championship aspirations.
Right.
And
right.
He would have been better off going to a rebuilding team where they was going to just give him minutes and let him learn from his mistakes. So he's still raw. And again, he was he led the Delaware Blue Coats last year to the G League championship. He also led the G League in steals, and he was named the Finals MVP. So outstanding player. So you got to give him some credit, some skill, but at the same time, this is going to be a big year for him to see what he can do, because if he can contribute on a team that the Sixers hope will make some noise in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, you like to see the G League stuff, no matter how you slice it. I mean, everybody will say, well, it is the G League. Well, the whole purpose of the G League is to get out of the G League, and to get to the next level for the players. So in that regard, I like it. I like the fact that, he played well there. And I want to see him get his opportunity. I mean, you said this yesterday. You win through, by drafting well and by being very, very effective during free agency. Well, he's a first round pick. And look what we have. We have currently a young first round pick taken in the 20s, who now looks like he should have gone in the top 10 of the lottery, in Tyrese Maxey. So you never know what you have unless you dust it off, pull it out the closet, or wash the carpet and put it on the road. And that's what I want to see here with Springer. I want to find out, put him in there. Hey, you and KJ Martin had these minutes to fight for. Who's going to take it? Who's going to be the dog? And who's going to be the guy sitting on the sideline saying, "I wish I were that guy." So I'm all for it. And again, it's negligible. It does, what is it? I mean, I'm sure it's a very low number. I don't know what the number is for his
It's
option.
$4 million.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
It's next to nothing in NBA parlance. So yeah, I've got no problem with it, and I like what I see from him so far. He seems to understand who he is quite early.
Yeah, he does. He does. He does. Well, look, y'all, I want to thank y'all for listening. We want y'all to have a blessed day. Again, we'll be back tomorrow to give you more about this James Harden situation, give you the update of it, the update of the new players that they have. So make sure you come back tomorrow to Locked On 76ers. But also, do yourself a favor and subscribe to this podcast. You can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts at. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts at. Also, go to our YouTube channel, Locked On 76ers YouTube. When you go there, make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you click on the Liberty Bell. When you do that, you become a new subscriber, and you also get notifications when we have a new podcast. So we want to thank y'all for joining in, listening, watching, and we want y'all to have a blessed day. Peace.
Talk to y'all.